Live from the heart of America, I'm Steve Gruber, ready to deliver an inclusive, diverse discussion on the most important topics of the day. And there are plenty. Giving you better analysis than anyone else, digging deeper, putting a spotlight into the darkness, and holding our nose as we look deep. Here are three big things you need to know to start your day today. Number one, the World Health Organization is warning of a very dangerous situation in Sudan with a biolab that has been researching viruses. They say the war there could trigger a release. Number two, Chuck Schumer and the Democrats are going to push forward a vote on the long-since-expired Equal Rights Amendment. It's true. They smell blood in the water and want to push ignorant Gen Zers to vote next year. This is how they're going to trigger the liberals. And number three, Joe Biden, as you know by now, has officially launched his bid for a second term. He did that as expected yesterday, but he has a lot of headwinds to deal with. At 80, he's already by far the oldest person to ever occupy the Oval Office. There are many questions about his abilities to do the job now. Clearly, it comes up daily. If he were reelected, he would be 86 by the time he left the job. Let's be clear. I don't really think anyone, including Democrats or the subservient media, want that to happen. Polling numbers are getting worse all the time for the octogenarian, and that's not likely to change. The president's positions on numerous issues, not popular, like the open border, hammering the Green New Deal on everybody's throats, and EVs too, the flippant reactions to inflation, and much more. But really, it is the question of age. And after he released a very dark-themed video attacking the so-called MAGA crowd, the RNC came with a video response of its own. Yes, they did. The RNC went after Joe Biden, now that he's officially running for president again. It's not a pretty picture. Here's what it sounded like. Go.
This just in, we can now call the 2024 presidential race for Joe Biden.
My fellow Americans.
This morning, an emboldened China invades Taiwan. Financial markets are in free fall as 500 regional banks have shuttered their doors.
Border agents were overrun by a surge of 80,000 illegals yesterday evening.
Officials closed the city of San Francisco this morning, citing the escalating crime and fentanyl crisis.
Who's in charge here? It feels like the train is coming off the tracks.
It does feel like the train's coming off the tracks even now. And everything that was said there, that little response, entirely believable. Taiwan being invaded, 80,000 pouring over the border simultaneously. We have no border security. With no border, we have no country. Right now, are we secure? No, we're not. Kayleigh McEnany, the former press secretary for Donald Trump, hammered the dishonest Democrats on a bunch of the points as well. Listen.
Biden flipped freedom on its head. Typically a Republican term that we throw out there. He flipped it on its head. Our response as a party needs to be, are you really free if you can't walk down the streets of Chicago without fear of being assaulted? Are you really free if your kid was locked out of their school for 2 years and has irreparable learning damage? Are you really free if you go to the grocery store and you're saddled with inflation? That's number one. Number two, it's very easy to watch that ad. You see dark, doom, gloom, MAGA, ultra MAGA Republicans is a theme of Biden. It's easy to laugh that off, and we kind of did that as a party for the midterms. Can't laugh that off. It worked in the midterms. So what do Republicans need to do? They need to flip the extremity on its head and put it right back at Biden while simultaneously proving that ad wrong by being the party of optimism, hope, a vision for the future. And so far, I like the response today from Trump put out a response. He said, look, for 24 months, you've not gotten a pay raise. Real median income has gone down in this country. Tim Scott out with another great response saying this president's targeting religious liberties, leaving the border open, wasting trillions of dollars we don't have. That kind of choice, to Kim's point, choice and unifying vision needs to be the unilateral voice of the Republican Party.
But despite all of those, complaints, which are legitimate, it is his age and nothing else that turns off voters in this country more. The normally protective press is not protecting him at the moment, but they will if there's a rematch with Donald Trump, which looks more likely every day. In fact, they will circle the wagons and protect him any way they can, no matter who the Republican nominee is. Let's be straight about that. And despite his age, it may be the best option for the socialists to go with right now. So says a guy who might know, Newt Gingrich. Says even though Joe Biden is a weak president with terrible approval numbers, he is the best the Democrats have right now. And though he doesn't know much, he knows that, does Joe Biden. Listen.
His view is he is the president. He thinks he can beat Trump, and he thinks that nobody can beat him for the nomination. And he's probably right. I can't imagine anyone defeating Biden for the Democratic nomination. So whether or not the country likes it, this is what they've got. They've got a guy who has a huge cloud of corruption. It gets bigger and bigger the more the House Republicans dig into the details. This is a guy who has tried to coerce the country on everything from transgender issues to climate issues to the border. And this is a guy who, frankly, has run a pretty incompetent administration, which is why most Americans think America is in decline, and most Americans think that we need a different approach. But he is where he is, and he doesn't intend to leave unless you defeat him. He's not going voluntarily.
Yeah. And then we come back to the point. He would be 86 years old if he were able to make it all the way to January of 2029. And we can only wonder what would be left of America if he really did stay in office until then. I mean, the damage done already is jaw-dropping, and the accumulation and culmination of all that damage could pile up over the next 6 years. Karine Jean-Pierre would not say if Joe Biden would even serve a second term of election. She wouldn't admit it. Here's more.
Question about the issue of the president. He's 80 years old, oldest man ever elected, would be 86 at the end of his second term. Our CBS News poll this morning shows that only 22% of Democratic-leaning voters are excited about the prospect of President Biden running for re-election. I want to ask you this. As a young man, when he was coming of age, the president who was inaugurated in 1961 said that it was time that a torch had been passed to a new generation. Why has President Biden not decided to pass the torch at this point? Why does he still want to hold it?
So a couple of things. I want to be very careful. Again, this is the 2024, related to the 2024 re-election, so I want to be very careful on that piece. But what I can say more broadly is that, as it relates to your first part of the question, when it comes to age, it's the same thing that we heard in 2020. Right? We heard that over and over in 2020.
And we were right then and we're right now. His age was a problem then. It's worse now. There's no question about that. His age is the single biggest concerning factor, and we're going to get to polling here in a few minutes from different places, including mainstream networks that are like, wait a second, what is going on here? We can't have this. What is going on here? We can't have this. So we're going to get to that coming up. Joe Biden, 86 years old, president of the United States. You've got to be kidding me, right? You've got to be kidding me. But look, if you didn't think he could win in 2020 and he did, however that happened, then you ought to be concerned that he can win again in 24. Frightening little place we live, isn't it? Because it's really down to 3 states, Arizona, Wisconsin, and Georgia. That's it. However those states go the election. Arizona, Wisconsin, Georgia. That's it. Michigan and Pennsylvania are off the table. We'll be back.